say your name right? Is it Rojas?
Yeah, it's Rojas.
Okay, good. Isabel, so nice to have you here. Thank you for joining us. I was just saying that we do these every Wednesday afternoons, and it's so fun because we get to talk to the authors and illustrators of diverse children's books. But, and especially with you being here, I think you're the first graphic novel author, illustrator that we've interviewed in the series so far. So just to emphasize, it's not just for kids. A lot of times people think about picture books, but it can also be for older kids, and hopefully we'll get it maybe even into some YA fiction or nonfiction later. So it is so nice to have you here. Let me back up. I feel like I'm
thanks for having me.
Yes. And just to see, this is, those of you who don't know, this is her latest book we're going to be talking about. Although she has done so much, like I said, she's an author and an illustrator. This isn't one of the many books that she has illustrated. But I'll let you go ahead. Why don't you give us an introduction to yourself and all of the different work that you've done?
Oh, okay. Well, it's kind of like mostly what you said. I'm my name's Isabel, and I'm a children's book illustrator. I mostly do picture books like these guys, and I also do book covers. Like I did this one for Erin and Trada Kelly. And but I also am a publisher of zines. Like I'm a really like super small press. I guess you would call it like a micro press. It's so small. I make my own zines for myself, but I also print books for other people. Like these were made by some artist friends of mine about art. It's just like funny little books and stuff because it's just great to collaborate with other people. And actually, the graphic novel we're going to talk about today is actually started out as a zine. So this was the original version of that. It was I used a risograph, and it's just like it was a 20-page zine before it got picked up and turned into a real graphic novel.
Wow, I didn't realize that. So did you always have the idea that you'd like it to be a graphic novel, or you just thought it would be a zine? You didn't realize it was going to go further than that?
Oh, no, I mean, I actually really wanted it to be a picture book. I thought it was a picture book idea. And I guess I keep telling people that it's kind of like an exercise in failure because I just couldn't make it work as a picture book. And then I took this mini comics class, and the homework was like, you know, make a 20-page mini comic. And I was like, oh, well, I have this idea already and some characters. And I guess it turned out that what I really needed was more words and more pictures and more panels. And so I kind of like fell into the making of this graphic novel.
Oh,
and I think if I knew how much work goes into a graphic novel, I would never have done it.
Oh, I'm sure, because there's so many more pages if you're used to doing picture books. But at the same time, it's hard for me. I just finished reading it. It's hard for me to imagine because it's I don't mean like complicated as in hard to follow, but there's so many things going on. It is hard for me to imagine it as a picture book because it seems like you need this space in a graphic novel to flesh it out. And I was actually thinking, because if I understand right, it's a series. I can't imagine it as being just one book, because you know, that works so well. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So back up, just thank you for giving us such an introduction, because I was really fascinated when I started to do some research and look at your website and everything, just how much, like what a variety of work that you've done. It's pretty exciting. What was your journey to becoming an illustrator and an author? Did you start out just like doing one particular thing, kind of expanded? Did you think that you would ever become an author also?
I guess I always dreamt that I would eventually become an author, but but I still can't believe that I've done it. And I still feel like I'm constantly faking it. But for the picture book stuff, I just fell into it as well. I mean, I was a collector of picture books before I became a creator, and I just loved them. I loved the simplicity. I loved the flexibility. And I love that you could talk about really like deep, important truths in such a simple manner. And so I just loved that format. And I was a collector. And then I kind of met people at a bookstore. This was in the Philippines. I was still living in the Philippines, and they were painting a mural on the wall. and it was just serendipity. Like it turned out, I found out later that they were part of an organization that was newly formed, and it was a children's book illustrators group. And I was a teenager, and I was just kind of like, could I join you? And I just hung around with them for like months. They just let me trail them. And eventually, you know, at some point I got offered a magazine illustration. And then from there, like a publisher contacted me, and then maybe I wanted to do a picture book. And so it just kind of grew, like one step at a time, you know, like, yeah, one brick at a time.
Oh, that's one, that just raised a question for me. Is the publishing, like children's book publishing, really different in the Philippines than it is here in the US? Was that a hard transition, or was it pretty similar?
It's pretty similar, but then like there's a lot more back and forth with the US and UK publishers. I feel like there's a lot more input from editors and art directors. In the Philippines, we work so fast that there's barely any time really to make changes. And I mean, hopefully that could change, because I think sometimes the revisions and the notes really help improve the work. And so yeah, I mean, it's still constantly growing. I mean, the industry in the Philippines is so nascent that, I mean, every year just there's so much growth.
Right.
So it's probably like a 30-year-old, a little older, like maybe 40-year-old industry. So yeah, so there's a lot, but it's also like really alive and very, very active and very experimental, because it's such a small market.
Right. So they have maybe feel a little more freedom to experiment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's so interesting. And I should jump in to say, while we're talking about your background and all the different work you've done, before we get into the graphic novel, that you did the poster for us. For those that don't know, we have a classroom kit on raising awareness about racism. And Isabel did the poster for that, which is really wonderful. If you don't have your copy, you can go to our website and you can download it for free. It's a really wonderful, wonderful poster.
I'm trying to find it to see if I can show it, but I thought I prepared.
That's all right. I thought I saw it there in the back.
Here it is.
Yes, it is such a wonderful poster. Thank you. Well, and so we can go ahead and jump in, if you'd like, to the graphic novel. Again, for those who haven't seen it, The Adventures of Team Palm, if I'm saying that right. Squid happens. This is such a great. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it before we dive in?
Oh, well, it's about a bunch of questing kids on their way to synchronized swimming superstardom, and on the way there, they meet a lonely giant squid who's being chased by a pair of nefarious rats in bowler hats, and mayhem ensues. So, I mean, you know, very simple, but there's plenty there.
Yeah, I saw one description said it was joyfully absurd, which I thought was such a great way to put it, because it is, like I said, it's hard to picture as to imagine as a picture book, because there's so much going on. You've got the squid, the synchronized swimming. I mean, how did you come up with this idea? Because it's so different than anything I've read before, which is wonderful.
Oh, thanks. I mean, joyfully absurd. My friends were like, "Oh, it also they just described you." Like, yes, I guess it was, I just got really lucky. I mean, I love to read the papers. I particularly love reading the science section of newspapers. And I guess that day there was an article about like the first video capture of the giant squid. And I just found that so fascinating. And right beside that article was some news about the Japanese Olympics synchronized swimming team, and I just saw them together, and I just thought that it would be really funny if, you know, this is a story. Something in there is a story, and so I made a painting a long time ago called like Squid versus the red team, and then so it was here. I'm going to show you. It's like this one. This was an old painting, and so it's kind of like, you know, just three girls and a giant squid in the ocean. And it's like, you kind of don't know if they're friends or if he'll eat them. And I just thought that, oh yeah, okay, well, maybe one day it'll be something. But at that moment, it was just a drawing. And yeah, so I mean, it took like 10 years to eventually turn into something.
Oh, I love seeing that painting. That's so cool that's how it got started, was just those two articles next to each other. That's so fun. One of the things I loved about it is, one is, the synchronized swimming. I feel like that I haven't seen a graphic novel about that before. And also, since we are talking about diverse children's books, that the characters in the book are so diverse. Was that a really conscious decision? Was that just kind of how they came to you, or why was that something that was important to you?
Well, definitely it was really important to me because, I'm Asian, and like I have like really good friends who are Mexican American, and I felt like I was inspired by them and I wanted to write about them. And also I set it in Queens where I live, and it's like the most diverse neighborhood in the country. And so it just kind of felt right to make a book about depicting their reality. And also it was important to me to kind of have just this really, really fun book that had people of color as the stars. I mean, like, I love Harry Potter and I love all the Roald Dahl books, but like, and as an Asian kid, I could totally like imagine myself being the star of those stories too. But I also felt like it would be nice if it were in a way like that we had this like funny, crazy story starring kids of color, and then also that white kids could also see, like, imagine themselves. Oh, that's really nice. That's like, it's not always white kids being the star of the story. And also I didn't want it to have so much cultural baggage. Like, it's not about them dealing with them being a minority or whatever. It's just, they're just the stars of this really wackadoodle story. And that people want to join in too.
Yeah, that was actually something that struck me. I mean, we need those stories, that talk about how people are dealing with these major issues, but it's also so fun to have one that's not about that. It's just, they're these kids and they have these interests, and it's maybe not even really related to anything else. It's, anybody can imagine themselves as part of it, and yet we have the kids of color front and center as the main characters. It was wonderful. Yeah,
just something fresh,
Yeah, definitely, like a breath of fresh air. I mean, it was really fun to read. And there's something I was going to ask. Did you base them on anybody in particular? I know you said you were inspired by some different friends, but they all have such, I'm just going to show some pictures here. They all have such unique personalities. I was wondering if they were based on someone, or you just had fun imagining these different quirks they have, because for those that haven't read it, they form a synchronized swimming team, but originally, which I have to say, one of my favorite parts of the book is the melting snowman that they do. That's their synchronized swimming routine, is that they actually melt as a snowman. But yeah, I was just wondering what inspired the particular characters in the book.
Well, since you mentioned the snowman melting routine, actually, like, my favorite poem when I was growing up, when I was a kid, was Shel Silverstein's "The Snowman in July," and it was like about the snowman who really, really wanted to see July, and I don't know why he wanted to see July, but then so it was this tragic poem that I just really loved as a kid, and so this was my send up to that.
Oh, nice.
And as for the characters, I mean, of course, they're all like inspired by my geeky friends growing up, and also my geeky friends now in the children's book world. But also, I guess they're like all different parts of myself. I mean, I think Roberta has my hairdo, but and I'm kind of like bossy like she is. But at the same time, there's that, like, a lot of that kind of nerdy bookishness of Ruby is also a part of me, and then the flightiness of Agnes, and even just like the peckishness of the rats. I mean, all these things are kind of like different parts of myself that I've just kind of like smushed together.
I love it, and like you said, it's also neat for kids for all kids to be able to imagine themselves in it because, like I said, so they formed the synchronized swimming team, but originally none of that, they all were trying to form their own clubs and nobody wanted, like as individuals, they were trying to get other people interested in the things there, like the pigeons or, you know, whatever, and nobody else would. So they kind of just joined together because they needed a club, even though they didn't quite agree on what they were going to do before they found the synchronized swimming. So I just thought that was kind of fun for all the geeky kids out there that we can enjoy seeing ourselves and reading this. So so I know this is a series. When can we expect to see the next one? Because I want to know who Steve is.
Well, I'm writing book 2 right now.
The villain. That's the villain in the story, guys.
Yeah, you're going to meet the villain. So we're working on book 2 right now. It's called The Last Dodo. So so that should be out hopefully next year if I can finish it. But, yeah.
How long does it take? I mean, you said this one was 10 years, but that was partly because you weren't really sure what format. How long does it take to do a graphic novel? Because it is so much work. I mean, all those panels and text and...
Yeah, and also I didn't know what I was doing, so it's kind of like learning on the job. So this particular book like took about 4 years to do from start to finish. But yeah, so hopefully we're hoping this book 2 won't take so long because I kind of have a better idea of where it's going, and also I've got a team to help now, so we'll see.
Is there only going to be one? I thought maybe I read or that there was going to be a third one, or no, or is it just 2 books, you know?
Oh yeah, there's 3 books.
Okay.
So yeah, definitely. So it's hopefully book 2 next year and then book 3 the year after that.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's nice to hear. Do you have other projects that you're working on right now? Because I think we're starting to get on our time. I'm sorry.
Well, yes. So there's book 2 coming out next year, and also like when I don't know that you saw, this was Our Skin, we did that one,
Yes.
and that came out this year, so it was actually a book about race, and but next year we're coming out, and I can finally show the cover. This is called Yes No, and it's the first conversations book about consent, which I had so much to learn. Also, well, when I did the book on racism, also, it's like I learned so much doing that book. The authors, Megan and Jessica, just are real experts and kind of really good at making resources for librarians and for teachers to actually have the tools to talk about like difficult topics like gender and race and consent. So I'm just really glad to be a part of that project also.
Oh, that's great. I didn't realize there was another one coming because, like you said, this is such a great book. Your illustrations are wonderful, and it was impressive to me because it went a lot more in depth than I've seen for a book at this age range.
Yeah.
But it did it in a way that totally, I read it with my kids and they totally got it. I mean, the text and also kind of the way you put it together with the pictures, like it totally made sense to them, but it really gets more into the nitty gritty of it than I think a lot of them would probably like stop at the first half of the book. And then,
Sure.
but it's so much more in depth into like the history and microaggressions, and it was really well done. So that's so neat. So the next one is about consent. When do you think, when's that coming out?
That's in February 22. So actually what's nice about it is there's also like several illustrators. So they already have a second book out that was a book about gender, but I didn't do that one. It was, but that's already out. So that came out this year, later, like fall this year. And yeah, and there's kind of like, we've lined up a couple of others. So I'm also doing a book on grief, but that's like several years
Okay.
ahead. But yeah, so it's all these difficult conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's so important to have with our kids. I mean, that's wonderful.
Yeah, and I think one of the best things that I remember hearing from Megan was, she was like, like it's ridiculous that I can't believe that there's like 100 books about shapes, but like so few books about race. And that's
Yeah, it's true.
something that we deal with and grapple with every day.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's just as important, if maybe not more important, for kids to be learning about, especially at a young age.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I think that's our time, but it was so much fun to talk to you and to get the backstory on your book and all the projects you're working on. Thank you so much for joining us. And like I said, make sure to visit her page and her website. You can also go to our website to download the poster and the entire classroom kit on racism. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Bye.